Shocking news for city employees today. Denver's mayor announced a hiring freeze and possible layoffs to balance a budget crisis.
City facing a $250 million budget deficit and a growing economic uncertainty. Denver 7's Brandon Richard digging into what caused the problem, who is to blame. And Brandon's in the studio tonight.
Well, the mayor finds himself in a position that no mayor ever wants to be in, forced to announce cuts, employee furloughs, all the while acknowledging the problem could get worse. He's putting part of the blame on President Trump and on government spending that took place years before he says he took office. But just how much is he to blame?
I just want to say as an opener, I know that this city has faced difficult challenges before. And in each one of those moments, we've come through those challenges stronger.
And with that, Denver Mayor Mike Johnston stood before cameras Thursday and announced the city is facing a budget crisis.
What we know right now is we are seeing structural financial challenges in the city that are true around the state and around the country.
He says the city's about $250 million in the red. He says it's forced him to order an immediate hiring freeze. And starting in June, most city employees will have to take 2 to 7 furlough days based on their level of income. He says this won't apply to sworn police, fire, sheriff, or 911 operators.
We do not envision a scenario where it's possible to right-size this budget without that impact on personnel.
He puts part of the blame on declining sales tax revenue that he says was caused by economic uncertainty created by President Trump, even though Trump has only been in office since mid-January.
This is the fundamental dynamics of a country that is worried about the economic forecast and is stopping spending as a result.
He also blames Denver's government spending that he says mostly occurred prior to him taking office.
That means structurally over the last 12 years, we have grown the costs of government 8% more than we've grown the revenues. That is unsustainable growth of government.
I asked the mayor about his spending. You also spending $57 million a year on your All-In Mile High initiative. There was a proposal to give raises to department heads, even though these people are already making 6-figure salaries, much more than typical Denverites do. So don't you have a spending problem? The mayor didn't answer that question directly, but says he is committed to reducing spending. He says migrant spending has already come down significantly. And when it comes to homelessness
is absolutely an investment in the city's economic growth.
And he says to get past the crisis, in addition to cuts, the city must invest in things that will spur economic growth. The mayor says the city must continue to invest in capital improvement projects like the proposed professional women's soccer stadium and the National Western Center expansion in downtown. He says those are the types of things that will drive the growth he says the city really needs.
Not necessary projects, though, Brandon. So how can the city continue to spend money on them given this huge budget shortfall?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's because funding for those projects comes from a separate fund, a capital fund that's financed mostly through debt like bonds. The fund that's in the red right now, what we're talking about, is the general fund, which is the fund that the city uses day to day to operate and provide city services. It's mostly made up of sales tax revenue.
All right, Brandon Richard for us tonight. Thanks so much for reporting. And taking a closer look at city spending here, the Denver auditor is questioning if the city is misusing taxpayer dollars, specifically on climate projects. In 2020, Denver voters approved a 0.25% sales and use tax to fund efforts to tackle climate change. Those tax dollars benefit the Climate Protection Fund, which is managed by the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resilience. Now, between 2021 and 2024, that fund received some $189 million. The auditor's office released a pretty troubling report today that found the Climate Office is funding projects for other agencies that do not always align with that office's goal and against the intent of Denver voters. It also found the office is understaffed, has a 33% vacancy rate, and that is causing underperformance. So in response to the report, the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resilience says it'll update its hiring plan and get staffing on track. It also says it will create a better process of monitoring projects funded by that voter-approved Climate Protection Fund.